Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing very good.
Great.
I
Good to
like the
see you.
color in the room.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Um,
It's nice and
I
it's light. It's not heavy.
yeah. I to be honest, we inherited the room in this color.
Okay.
Um, but as you can tell from my shirt, I'm roughly trying to match it.
Do you have like a different colored shirt for each room or?
It's a good question. I would love to say yes. However, most of my wardrobe is pretty much yellow and black.
There's
So
color. I've seen you when I see your colors are like bright.
yeah, I
You tend
generally
to wear bright colors.
I do wear bright colors. I like bright
Nice.
colors. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm grateful. I love that sign behind you.
Thank you.
It's fun. I usually, when seeing someone on Zoom, I will make note of the things that are in, around them and behind them because I always find there's some level of intention to them.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I've never actually seen something that was curated for um, my presence in the room. So
There
it's
you
really
go.
cool. It's exciting.
I was wondering whether you'd see that or not.
I do. I do.
I,
Thank you.
You're welcome. I just started using that board.
Oh, cool.
So I said it was just sitting there, and Minaz was not using it anymore.
Hmm.
So I said I think I could use this. So let me try it.
Cool. That's great.
Nice, man. You don't, is there anything else you recognize as it's not intentional for you, but I know that you've spent a lot of time.
Yeah. So, good question. I'm looking a little bit at the sports memorabilia as bringing up some memories. Obviously, I see ukulele in the top corner over there.
There you go, the
Um,
uke.
so I picked that up, and then there's a bunch of like books which I'm tempted to look really close at the screen and pick out them being what they are, but I'm also conscious that maybe that's for later.
No, no, that's fine. That's fine. Listen, it is good to speak with you again.
You too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's been too long. Lots of stuff has happened.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you noticed this, but when I was searching for your name in my inbox to follow up on a message,
Yeah.
there's like a multi-year journey to get to this point. I think this is the third time we tried to do this, and each time something else came up,
Yeah.
and so it's nice to be able to do this.
Yeah, for sure, man. Listen, again, thank you so much for your time. Uh, you are busy, um, at least according to like Instagram and stuff like that, which is one of the ways I've sort of kept up with people is just seeing what's going on that way, and understanding that that's not always everything that's going on with people.
Mhm.
Um, but similar to what you did, I sort of threw your name in the search engine and said, okay, what's been going on, what's been happening, and I don't know if it was the last time because we sort of have spoken off camera, off tape,
Mhm.
many times, in between the sort of media chats that we've had.
Mhm.
Um, but I remember obviously when you were with My City Lives,
Mhm.
uh, I chatted with you in this capacity at least 2 to 3 times,
Yeah.
for sure. But there's been a lot of stuff that you've been doing since then, and so I want to sort of pick it up from you leaving My City Lives, if that's okay with you, or I don't know if leaving's the right word or not, but
Yeah. Yeah. That's one word.
leaving or stopping or moving on, sort of thing, right? We all have our journeys, for
Mhm.
sure, but tell me about leaving that, because you left that and you joined CSI.
Yeah.
the space that you guys were actually in at that time.
Yeah. Um, I think, just to pick up on your choice of words, I think leaving feels, accurate enough.
Yeah,
Transition from, move on, um, recognize that that chapter had ended and I was ready for a new one. And you know, My City Lives was home. Our home was in the Center for Social Innovation, which is a co-working space and community for many social entrepreneur organizations and beyond. And while there, I really fell in love with the community and the ethos of CSI. And I would say it was a really natural and quite a fortunate transition for me to go from one organization to another,
yeah.
and to be held by the community in that transition, because it was quite hard for me, to be honest.
How easy, and correct me if I'm wrong, but looking back, My City Lives, yes, there was community around it, but it was a technology, I don't know, solution, if that's the right word.
Mhm.
And then going into community first,
Mhm.
and you've based on what I've seen, you've been focused on people more
Mhm.
so than a technology solution necessarily. Um, how What was that immediate transition like?
Years later, than what we're talking about right, this moment, I did a lot of work to understand, where I'm uniquely skilled, and where my specific passions and interests lie. And with the advantage of being able to look back and see a lot of the data points, it's very clear that I have a pattern of working IRL and directly with people. Um, I appreciate and love all the things technology does,
Sure.
and uh, I feel like I'm meant to be in physical space, in real world, figuring out how to organize ourselves in that way.
Nice. Listen, let's pause here. To be remiss of me not to ask you, how have you been these past couple of years?
You mean the years of the pandemic?
Yeah,
Um, the first word that comes up is I feel quite grateful. I think in the grand scheme of things, while there has been a lot of challenges, there continues to be a lot of challenges. For the most part, when I learn about other people's experiences, I just feel very fortunate for my own.
hmm,
Um, I feel like I have the privilege of community and other resources that have um, that have kept me together over the last couple of years. And even the work that I'm doing now, I feel very fortunate. I left my job very early in the pandemic, so that I could pursue this work, and even being able to do that, I could kind of see myself as part of the great resignation movement. But it was incredibly fortunate for me to be able to do that. So yeah, I've been things have been hard, but I've been
yeah.
good.
Well, that's
What
good.
about you?
Ah, busier. I think busy is a word I would use. Um, I tend to have I don't know if I think it's a fault of wanting to be doing something at all times,
Mm,
or most times. Even on the weekend, I tend to want to have a list of things to do, and whether the list is stuff like vacuum and laundry and make bread, or edit an episode. I tend to want to fill up my days with things. Um, so all this time that I have saved, I guess I don't need to dress anymore.
right.
I don't need to get in the car or the bus and go to work anymore. I get to stay home. It's like, oh, what can I do more of now?
Right.
You know,
Right.
so I think it's a fault because uh, I know there's value, and we'll get to this as well. You know, some of the work that you're doing.
Mhm.
There's value in resting and just chilling out, you know,
Mhm.
and just putting everything aside and just going with the flow sometimes, you know. So, but yeah, I think busy would describe these past couple of years for sure.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I had to unlearn a lot of my relationship to productivity.
Oh yeah.
Um, I know you were asking me about my transition into CSI, but a little bit about my transition out of CSI. I spent a year, what I like to say is off of work and on from life, and I I spent a lot of time reflecting, and one of the things that became very clear was I was obsessed with being productive. My life revolved around my inbox, and I really really had to confront that because it didn't feel like, for me at least, that was the existence to which I would have felt the most fulfilled in.
Wow. And was that something that you felt or something that, I don't know, outside, whether it's a book you read or the people that you kept around you recognized? Like, how did you come to that realization?
The organization that I work with and for right now, it's called Reset, and the premise of the organization was to disconnect from our tech in order to connect with ourselves and each other. And 5 or 6 years ago, we started organizing these digital detox summer camps that were centered around play. And when I had my year on for life and I reflected on my different teachers, uh, Reset, the organization and the community who co-created it, I realized were the reasons that I was able to confront the fact that all I wanted to do was work. Because even in this space of play, which I was co-responsible for creating, I actually resisted it tremendously. It was only in our fourth year where I actually started to play, and
So even
and
the
so
even the reset, you were working that you weren't enjoying it.
yeah, like
Okay.
I was the emergency phone contact for the first 3 years. So I was the one who had my phone out of everyone at the camp. Everybody else to check their tech when they came to the door. I kept mine on, and I hid behind organizing and never actually participated. It was only in the fourth year when I stepped back fully from organizing and I had no choice just to show up, that I realized how much, even in that space of such intentional play and presence, I
Yeah.
was still finding all the ways and reasons to be productive. And that was a hard but important truth to face.
And so when you were forced to play, that's a weird way to put it. You were forced to have fun. What like what's going on? Is there are you feeling strange? Are you weird? Are you feeling empty? Like what's going on with you?
Uh, I think a lot is going on. I mean, that's one of the most exciting things about play. Play is it is a portal to feelings, amongst other things, and it's an extremely vulnerable activity. So I felt quite resistant, but when I got through that, I felt free. I
Huh.
felt free the way we feel when we're younger, and the best parallel I could give, which you may be able to relate to, is when I was in school and recess would happen, I would be so quick from my desk to that field. Um, there was a particular energy to that that I began to feel again, and so what's actually happening in order to kind of get from stuck in a productive cycle into this playful cycle. I mean, there's a ton of science and even spirituality behind that, which is, again, in my kind of year of reflection, I was able to really kind of put all those pieces together and begin to see, this work is being profoundly impactful on me, and something which I was really interested then on working on further, more so than just a side project off the side of my desk.
Yeah, which is how Reset started, right? It really started as a side thing, something to do in the summer. How did it all begin?
Well, I was working at CSI at the time, and three of my eventual co-founders, Hema, Nagin, and Andrew, first got together and were inspired by this idea of adult summer camps, based on an organization that was doing this work in California called Camp Grounded. They saw the idea, they noticed it wasn't happening in Ontario, and they decided it was something they wanted to do. And then they brought together another group of people, including Emma, Rhea, Vlad, Antonio, and then myself, to become kind of the founding team. And I actually resisted so hard being a part of it. And
Why is that?
well, I think like it scared me. I think the idea of being away from my technology was seeming exciting was scary. I think the idea of play was scary. And frankly, again, I was just so busy. I had reached a point in my life where what people asked me, how you doing? And my answer was busy. And so all of what they were talking about felt radical and silly and not very adult-like. And so they made it very easy for me to be a part of it. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. And then we in turn invited people that we knew, and in the initial Camp Reset, those 80 people who came, the founding 80, collectively co-created what exists today.
So tell me about that first. You're like, what was going on at a Reset?
Well, there's three parameters that define our experiences. One is no tech, so no phone, no cameras, no smartwatches, no laptops, and I think we all recognize, when I talk to people about this then and now, I think we fundamentally all recognize, in theory, how freeing that is. But when it actually happens, and more importantly, when everyone around you is doing the same thing, you kind of portal into a world that doesn't exist now. I mean, there's very few places, unfortunately, where we exist, where we can say that is the case, and that we're free from even surveillance. And so, premise one, check your tech. Premise two, no work talk. Getting away from the idea that our identities are defined by our work. There was no work talk that was part of the experiences. And then the third one was an invitation to use a nickname. And the idea of the nickname was to spark one's imagination, to show up how they would like, and to kind of leave some of their identities at home so they could kind of be whoever they want to be at camp. It also turns out nicknames, I think, are much more easier to remember than real names. and so those were the parameters. So you show up, that was the design parameters. And then over a 4-day arc, we would organize activities that were centered around play. And we invited the people who participated to also contribute towards that. And what happened from there was wilder than our most whimsical dreams. I think when we started it sounded like a nice idea that we would just do the thing, but then after year one, when we felt the impact within ourselves, let alone the people that attended, we were like, okay, well, what do we do next? And we began to think about Reset beyond year one.
Nice. And so was it a yearly camp? Is that how it sort of got started?
Yeah, it was an annual camp. And every year we kind of we changed the size and the shape a little bit to accommodate our growth and our learnings. There was always growth, but we never wanted to exponentially grow the way the dominant culture of our times says is the way to go. We knew that, particularly because the experience needed to be a space where people felt comfortable to be vulnerable, that the growth of the organization had to be slow. And so, by growth, we went from 80 people to 100, to 150, to 200, et cetera. And we got up to about 250 people. And of course, that's when the pandemic happened.
Oh, wow.
So we haven't actually hosted We actually haven't hosted camp for a couple of years now.
But was it this past summer? Idle, correct me if I'm wrong. Was it this past summer you started doing, and maybe this is different, you started doing these pop-up playgrounds or something?
Yeah. So no, you're totally right.
Okay,
So
yeah,
what happened, and I'll weave in a little bit of what I was sharing earlier. So, I was working for an organization at the beginning of the pandemic, and uh, for all the reasons why it would make sense, i.e., job security,
sure.
and like I made sense to stay with this organization. I enjoyed their work. I enjoyed the people I was working with, but I couldn't shake the feeling that at a time of mass disconnection, this organization that really did some innovative work around connection had a role. And there were a number of people in our community who shared that feeling. But of course, the question was, how do we do that? Because we can't gather in the way that we know how. And that led to a series of town halls and consultations with, invite was put out to the Reset community. And what came from that was this idea of adapting one of our most successful Camp Reset activities, which was an audio playground that you did with other people, and take that experience and adapt it so it could be done in parks and public spaces in Toronto. And by doing so, we could contribute to the city's social recovery required due to the pandemic, and make the work that we're doing more accessible. Because the challenge with camp is beautiful to be a part of, but it's not culturally, financially, sometimes physically accessible. And so the idea of bringing our work into the city was actually following momentum that was already created in previous years. But it was bringing even further attention to this idea of how can we reconceptualize this organization rather than just standing back until the pandemic was quote unquote over. And one other kind of driving factor at the beginning of the pandemic, of course, almost everyone I knew, myself included, was figuring out how do we do what we were doing offline in an online way, enter
Yeah.
the age of Zoom. And we really had to check what that felt like for ourselves. And we ultimately made the decision that we were not going to move any of our organizing or activities online. That part of what made it special was exactly the opposite. And so what that meant is that we had to just think within the parameters that existed, and design with the pandemic in mind. And for that to happen, it required a lot of work. I left my job.
Wow.
Many other people contributed. The pop-up playground itself was co-created by about 84 individuals, researchers, psychologists, artists, volunteers, community organizers. Like, we were all trying to answer this question: how do we unlearn the fear that we have learned for the person in our neighborhood, the stranger that we see in the street? You remember those early days of the pandemic, we'd see someone we didn't know and we would cross the street. And we were in fear about the person we didn't know, let alone the people we did know. And so we were all trying to answer this question: how do we unlearn that through a 30-minute exercise? And play disrupts patterns. And so we were hoping to accomplish that. So we ended up doing 50 of these pop-up playgrounds that summer.
50. And was it like summer of 2021?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. I want to talk more about this play, but you've said this a couple of times where you don't refer to the attendees at camp, or even over the summer, as attendees or customers or campers, but you refer to them as they helped create. So that's a different way of thinking, for sure. Is that intentional? Like, how do you see them as co-creators and not consumers, let's say?
Well, I think fundamentally, first of all, we're not a product for consumerism. We're a product for connection. I think even calling us a product is in itself feels not entirely aligned with who we are and what we're doing. What I consistently refer to the people who participated or attended a Reset event is a community.
Yeah.
many of those people within the community have co-created, and the definition of co-creation could be very loose. It could be like, by showing up, you are contributing towards this experience because it's an immersive experience. It requires, if you're there, to be some way contributing towards it. Or it could literally mean like you put in hours to design an experience, or be at a registration desk, or amplify the cause and work in some way. And so the reason why this is important, I believe, and I think many others who have been a part of this have believed, is the culture of consumerism, amongst many things, is centered around the idea of ownership, is centered around the idea that things are scarce, and therefore we work to we need to work to have our own thing. And in Reset, the philosophy has been rooted in abundance, and that nothing truly can be owned, but it can be shared. And so one of the ways that we have tried to create that culture, and we haven't always done a great job, is by always creating space for other people to contribute towards it. And that doesn't always work out, and we've learned some very hard lessons along and around the way. But what's beautiful, I believe, about it is that we're just one big puzzle, and constantly evolving based on the contributions of the people who participate in that puzzle or who have.
Wow. So tell me about some of these playgrounds, these games that you did over the past summer.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about it, and I'll tell you a little bit about the kind of the underlying spirit underneath it all.
Yeah.
And it kind of permeates all of our work. So specifically what the playground, the pop-up playground is you'd show up to 10 people could do it at once, because we were designing at that time for the pandemic parameters of 10 people outdoors as a maximum gathering size. We give them headphones, and we would play an audio track, and that audio track would have a narrator. That narrator was also the kind of lead designer, an artist and creator named Shazia Abji. And that narrator, Shazia, would, although in the experience her name was Ark, and she would guide people in a series of activities, individual presencing, improv, theatrical, ultimately to lead them towards a kind of somewhat of a flash mob group dance activity. And they were fun, they were light. One of the biggest things that people said that they felt from the experience was that they were able to just leave behind some of the heaviness that they were carrying on account of not just the pandemic, but like what feels like a world that is unraveling in many different ways. So it was, we referred to it as an audio adventure meets silent disco, that could be done in 30 minutes and turn strangers into, silly participants in this shared experience. And the underlying kind of spirit that drove through that and drives through everything we do is this idea of just play. So our vision is for a world where adults feel a sense of permission around just play. And that essence of just play comes from two of our biggest learnings over the years. One, most adults don't feel a sense of permission around play. In light, going back to our conversation around our culture of busyness and productivity,
yeah,
we're born with an instinct to play, but it is socialized out of us. And so just play is a bit of a directive, similar to the Nike slogan, to just do that. But the other kind of part informing just play is from our lesson over the years that it is really hard to have collective joy without justice. And so just play is the intersection of justice and play. And just play is play that is centered on connection rather than competition. It is nonviolent. It prioritizes equity and access. Puzzles, dancing, connective cards. There's a whole world of play like this that already exists. Some of it also can be created now. There's an emergent field around it. And specifically in the world of play, that's the play that we gravitate towards.
So
the
it's
audio
not,
experience was one in just play.
yeah. So it's not, let's play a game and there's a winner, but let's play a game and let's all have fun. And there's no sort of
Correct.
end of
Yeah.
winning, losing.
Correct, because play for the sake of play.
Yeah.
There's nothing against inherently play that is designed for winning, but if you think of play that is centered around competition, often what it's doing is reinforcing some of the elements of our current society, which we feel, which I feel, and perhaps others feel needs to change. Hierarchy, the fact that there needs to be a winner. In some cases, violence as the strongest is the most successful or the best asset. Like, play for the sake of play. And I think the idea of all of us winning resonates because Kareem, I think about the fact that this world is hard, and it has a lot of things that make it a struggle and make it an experience in suffering. And I'd like to think, and I know there's many other people who have said this as well, that we are here also to have a good time.
Yeah.
And that we're here to connect with each other and not compete with each other. And so just play is inspired by that spirit. And it's been really wonderful to kind of be on this learning journey around it.
Yeah, it's amazing. You said earlier that, sometimes an excursion, like going to a camp, is not accessible for many people for different reasons. So I'm curious, how did you design these games and these playgrounds to be accessible? So I'm curious if you went to different parts of the city that maybe don't have facilities or access to things. If you could tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think instead, so one of the biggest things is we went to different neighborhoods, and we didn't go to all the neighborhoods, but we tried to get to as many different ones as we could, and so instead of telling people come to us, we brought what we were doing to them should they be interested. But of course, accessibility, there are so many different forms of it. So there's financial is another element to which we can consider accessibility. So there's opportunities for people to get discounted, if not free tickets. Another form of accessibility, of course, is physical accessibility. And so we consulted with people with lived experience, whether they use mobility devices or assisted hearing devices, amongst others, in order to understand if the experience would be one which would work for them. And so, I think the work of accessibility is never complete. It's one that you're constantly evolving, and particularly the only way to do it, I think, is by just making the people at your table more and more diverse, to bring in more experiences, to try and find the alchemy that's most accessible to people.
Interesting. There's a lot of people look at lockdowns and COVID and what's been happening the past couple of years, and many people have different reactions to it, right? And when I say people, I mean like groups of people, right? You have groups of people that would say, okay, we need to make sure that we isolate, that we get ourselves vaxxed, that we wear masks, and so on. There's groups of people that will say, forget about it, I'm free to do what I want. And there's a group of people like that. And then and there's many other groups. I don't want to just say there's two, but it's interesting that if I can call Reset a group, that you took a look at what was happening and say, how do we just bring people back together and have some fun and play? And so, a lot of people look at, I don't know, different responses, but your response, I don't know if what you're doing is a response necessarily to the pandemic, but it is a very interesting one. That's for sure. And I'm curious if if you do see this as a response, or is this just a continuation, whether or not there's COVID?
Well, yeah, it's a great question with a lot of layers to it. We are, without a doubt, we are responding to this moment in time, and I'll share about our retreat center that we're just about to open as
Yes, I
a
want to talk more
example of
about that. Yeah.
And I would say that like our work is a continuation, not just the work that we've done, but a lot of our thinking, the paradigms that we're leaning into are the work of others, like the amount of Adrian Reed Brown or Bell Hooks or Mr. Rogers, or I can list so many different people that I know who indirectly we are a form of continuation of their work and their wisdom. So yeah, so I think there's something there, and as it relates to also your point about the two sides. So the two sides is a form of binary thinking.
Yeah.
And what we're increasingly learning is that the binary thinking has actually limited our capacity to exist in a healthy way altogether. We are more of a spectrum or a rainbow than O's and ones. And so the reason why I bring that up is there's a phrase in improv called yes and. I don't know if you're familiar with it. And the idea is if you're improvising with someone and they say a thing, and the way to continue the kind of flow is to say yes and you do your thing, and it's kind of what you're saying is like, and both can be true. And so I think a lot about yes and I've yes-anded yes and now I just say and. I think when we think about our world right now and we think about the two sides, I think there's truth on both sides. I think it's a mistake to try to be in the paradigm we're in where there's a constant pursuit of one truth or an ultimate truth, this hierarchical truth, and the sense of being right. We can both be right and we can both be wrong. And it is fundamentally about figuring out what we share in common, and play is something we share in common. And so our work is absolutely in response to this. And so, as I mentioned, this week, actually, it's cool because, you and I set up this date a little while ago. It just so happens to happen at a pretty magical milestone for the organization. This week we're launching the Reset Retreat Center, building on our success from the playgrounds. One of the biggest things we asked people is, what would you want? And they said, permanent place to play, which was consistent with the feedback we got over the years from camp, from people when they said, okay, camp was cool 4 days a week or 4 days a year, but like what happens all the other time? And so we're piloting a retreat center in the city, similar to what we've been talking about. Retreat centers are often things that are inaccessible to a lot of people because they're out of town and or expensive. We think bringing the premise of a retreat center into the city, and again, the paradigm of what we do at camp, but within an old convenience store, and seeing what it can do for connection, community, and collective joy, as being our next chapter. And so, this week we open the doors for that, and for the next 6 months, we're going to have a radical experiment in just play, and it's really it's such an honor to be doing this work.
That's like, especially at this time, like, who thinks of opening up a place where you have to go inside, when sometimes, there are laws that say, no, you can't go inside and hang out. So that must have been a leap of faith.
Well, yeah,
or maybe not.
I think if I'll tie it back to where we started in this conversation. You asked me about My City Lives, and what we didn't talk about what I learned from it, but what I can say about My City Lives is that we were amongst some of the first mobile apps in the world that were video based, and I spent a lot of time thinking about our experiences in the digital world, and where we are at now. And what really came up for me then is, the more and more we move towards integrating technology into our lives, the less we have the chance for real world connections.
Yeah.
And I think the continuum from my story, since you and I first spoke and met, over 10 years ago now, is that, I feel that part of my purpose for being here is a sense of responsibility to defend the real world. And I think I know that we're roughly similar age. Like, I think we're amongst a generation of people who know what the world was like before and after the internet. And as a consequence, I really think that we have a unique responsibility and or opportunity, depending on how you want to see it, to celebrate, cherish, and if not even defend what is great about being human, because where we're going with technology is becoming it, if not already. And many of our technology leaders and thinkers talk about the idea of singularity and moving towards the moment where we've already, we become one with tech. Arguably, we're already there, if not on the doorsteps of that. I think that is exciting for a number of reasons. I'm not against that. I just want to make sure we don't lose about what's great about being human. And so the idea of opening up a physical space at this time is directly related to that, because as we connect more and more online, understandably, and with benefit for doing so, we are consistently moving away from what makes online or offline great. And so we are going against the grain, but I think for good reason. And I think our advantage is that we are being born in this space, knowing the parameters. I think for physical locations right now, the biggest challenge is that they're reverse engineering themselves to be, pandemic appropriate. That's super tough. I have family that is in this realm of work that has physical retail locations, and I have so much sadness for what their experience has been. Where I think we are fortunate as an organization is that we're open up knowing this, so everything we do can be informed from that as design parameter, and as a consequence we can contribute towards, I think, a much broader movement of people who are figuring out how do we gather again.
Yeah, that'd be really fascinating to just witness, this experiment for sure. What kind of and I'm afraid to ask this question because I think I might know it subconsciously. What sort of programming can one expect? Like, do people just kind of show up, or is it like, tell me about the space?
Yeah, so similar to how I explained the parameters of camp, you show up and you check your tech. You leave your phone at the door. Specifically, you have a locker to do that in, and no work talk, and you're invited to introduce yourself however you wish, name, nickname, alike, and you come into the space, and I would say first and foremost, if that's all you do and you come into the space, that is more than enough. Going back to our conversation about productivity, there is a cycle we're in around, well, I got to do a thing. In actuality, like, so much of our existence is just actually figuring out how to be. And without the distraction of work and technology, the space is already a profoundly different container to what we're traditionally used to. With that said, there are opportunities in the place. There's a bunch of toys, adult toys, from fidget spinners to puzzles. I'm
glad. I don't mean to. I have to interrupt you, Adel. I'm glad you defined adult toys by saying fidget spinners, because I was afraid of, what kind of a space. Anyways, continue.
Of course. Yeah, it's interesting. it's interesting. I've had that experience before too, where people have associated immediately when I talk about adult play as being sexual. I think people are often quite disappointed, or at least who come to our experiences with the assumption that there's something more sexual about it. I think they're
Are
often
you serious?
disappointed
Like, really?
with how devoid I often think
Oh, wow.
the experiences are. And that's because so much of our the emphasis in order to create a space for people feel safe enough to play and to connect. I mean, you have to do a lot of work to ensure that the dynamics that occur when you go into a club or a bar traditionally are not existing and showing up in the same way.
Sure.
So anyways, we digress
Yeah,
on that. So yes, you come into space, first and foremost, just be. If you want to do something beyond that, the basement floor is actually a co-created art piece. So people from the community, it's a lounge, but people from the community over the 6 months of the pilot are invited to create. We're calling it the Enchanted Forest, and the idea is we really wanted to bring the nature part to the space because a lot of times people don't have access to nature, and so that's certainly in the way that you might if you get out of town. And so we were like, oh, let's bring plants in and turn into a forest. And then we thought, well, most plants might not actually live in the basement. They might need to be a little bit more creative and crafty. And then it kind of morphed into from that idea to being something where we could invite people to bring something in. So now we have people who are someone's creating a labyrinth in there, somebody else is creating putting little fairy doors in there. Like there's all sorts of little things that are kind of being put into that space. And then programmatically, like the things that we know with certainty that we'll be offering every single day, there'll be a laugh circle and there will be a dance. And by dance, like a dance party. And we use silent disco headphones. So it's multi-channeled, which means two of those channels are different kinds of music. And one of them, the third channel, will be a meditation channel, because some people, I know myself, just need to tap out of like a dance party and find some inner calm. And that's what we know we're doing, because when we did the playgrounds, we asked people, okay, cool, if you want a permanent space to play, like what do you need, what do you imagine there? Most often people would just say, I just need a place to dance and know that I can do that any day of the week, and it not be like a club. So that's what we are doing. But as we have done with our other experiences, we've created some programming to kind of create some element of programming, but the invitation now is out to the community of people who would like to co-contribute to the space. And so as we open, we're extending invitations to people who are interested, who have different forms of programming that fit the pillars of justice and play, to just play. And to your previous question around accessibility, it's important for us for these people to come from a wide diversity of identities, because play can be experienced in so many different ways based on someone's experiences. And so I think, like, it's funny when people ask, like, so what's going to happen there? And I like to respond by saying, I know 50% of what I think is going to happen, and then 50% I have no idea. But I think that's super important, because that is the only way that we can truly be genuine and authentic in our desire to create something collaborative. If we showed up with the finished product, nothing wrong with that, but it wouldn't be within our ethos and how we believe, the kind of solidarity and the collective spirit that we want to exist within.
That's so cool. Okay, so this sounds fascinating. How does somebody find out about what's going on and where this place even is?
So the place is it's located in Oakwood Village. For those people who are in Toronto listening, it's close to Eglinton West Subway, if that's helpful. But I know, Kareem, I was looking at your history, at your incredible library of people that you've interviewed over the years, and I know you have an audience that is more geographically spread as well. So so beyond that, I hope that we can be in other neighborhoods if that makes sense, if the pilot is successful. But for now, we're in Toronto, and come to our website at thisisreset.org. Or on IG, we're at Hello Reset, and I'm sure in your podcast description you'll have at least my name, and someone
Oh,
can search that and
absolutely.
they can find us. They can find us that way.
For sure. I'll make sure in the show notes to leave your Instagram and your website for sure. I feel like just coming out and just putting myself in that position where you were when you went for your fourth camp and decided to get a little bit uncomfortable and put away the phone finally and just participate. Because I thought I played, but this sounds like so much different. This sounds like a different definition of play than what I'm used to. I thought we played a little bit of lacrosse on Saturday, and that was fun. But there was also some. It was fun, no one's keeping score or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But it was competitive in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
So this sounds much different. So I'm looking forward to hopefully one day making my way over there. And
you're always welcome. And I'm really grateful for you having created this platform for us to share, for me to share the work of our community, and again for the literally hundreds of hours you put into amplifying many other people's stories. I went all the way back to your first one with Kareem Awad.
Oh yeah.
And just like following your journey with this show, with this platform, it's really inspiring. So thank you. I'm grateful to be here, and for all the kind of things that I've learned through kind of following along.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I want to end off this way. So back in 2011, almost to the day, February 23rd, 2011, I published a blog post called Happy Birthday Edition of 5 Questions starring Adil from My City Lives. And so I had asked you 5 questions, and I want to ask you the same 5 questions. And I want to, some of them I'll have to tweak.
Okay.
But I want to ask you these questions. And I think what I'll do is I will post both series of answers.
That's so cool. That's what an amazing thing to offer, just for me personally.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
So here's question number 1.
I have no idea what I said. I
know that. I know that.
No, I'm not even gonna try, but
wow. And I'm not expecting like the same answer, but when I quickly went through your answers, of course, we all grow, we all change, but I think your foundation has always been there. Because I remember asking you, like, why My City Lives, and you told me a story of going to Africa and sort of seeing what was going on and coming up with an idea that morphed its way into My City Lives. So, I think people has always been at your foundation and how you can serve people and be of service to people. So that's always been there. But let's get to the questions, Adil.
Cool.
Okay, so number 1, what motivates you to do what you do on a daily basis?
Well, without a doubt, the first word that comes up is Seva. For those who aren't familiar with that word or what it means, another word would be service.
If you had 30 seconds to impart your wisdom on a classroom of soon-to-be graduates, what would you say?
Yeah, in those 30 seconds, I think I would just say whatever. So I'm thinking in one word right now. I'm thinking a lot about passion, and I think my wife, Shobi Kimdala, she supports people in finding and feeling their passion. And what I've seen from the work that she does, and benefiting from it directly, is that for many of us, myself being included, we tend to have and know what we're passionate about from a younger age, but we for many reasons we lose the flame along the way. And I think what I would tell that class is surround yourself by people who fuel your passion, and don't try and dim your light.
So here's the third question I asked you, and so you'll understand why I want to change it. So I asked you, if you had a crystal ball, what would you say will be the most important technological development over the next 12 months? So I want to take out that technology word. So if you had a crystal ball, let me ask you this way. Where do you see the work that you're doing around justice and play a year from now?
Like specifically our organization, or more broadly?
Sure, or broadly or specific?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are on the precipice of, call it a renaissance or a revolution. Our systems that we have, existed from a number of years are falling apart, particularly starting with capitalism. And I think what our work is doing is part of a movement of organizations and individuals who are co-creating a new economy. I don't know what that is. I know it's rooted in solidarity. I know it prioritizes the environment. And I know ultimately that it's focused on figuring out how we can live abundantly, every single one of us. And, 10 or 12 or whatever years from now, I think, if you ask me that question, I hope we will be further along, but I know that journey is a very, very long one. But also I know it's one that could happen much sooner rather than later. There's a classic Yan situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like my broad answer then to that is, we're part of a journey that is co-creating a new economy, and ultimately, a world where it's going to be much different than this one.
So I also asked you, what's been one of the most important technological developments over the past 12 months? So instead, today I'll ask you, what's the most important thing you've done in the past year?
Oh, there's so many directions to take that. I mean, the first thing that came up was, I got to get married, and I am a hopeful romantic. I think that love is the most powerful force that exists, and that it is constantly being suppressed, particularly by our dominant systems. And I think if we are to forge that new world and new economy that I was talking about, I think it will come from love. And so, to be able to celebrate love, that in the way that we got to do, particularly given these times, it felt without a doubt like a highlight. And certainly within the last year, the biggest thing that I can think about. So, that would be my answer.
Nice. So you can tell you and I were in the tech space back in those days. And so my last question was, who is one of Canada's tech stars? And by the way, let me read some of these names out to you. So your sister, Amira.
Yeah.
Raymond Coe. Rob Lay. And Amrita Mathur.
Wow. Okay.
Those were the names when I asked you that question. But let me ask you this one. Um, in the space of justice and play, and that could be together or separate. Um, who are some people that you take inspiration from?
Um, Without a doubt, I think a lot about my mother, who I think um, more than anyone in my life embodies those pillars. Um, I think about some of the folks that I previously mentioned, particularly Bell Hooks, Adrienne Marie Brown. I think about the philosophy of Ubuntu. Um, I think about uh, many, indigenous, ancient Indian cultures where my ancestors' roots are, um, that have prioritized space for play and the importance of justice. But Arms of Karim, like I feel like I see inspiration in everyone around this. Like we all have the capacity for play, and I think my understanding of our experiences here, so much of it is centered on our desire to belong. So we all have the capacity for justice and play and to just play. And so there are people that I do want to celebrate, and I appreciate you having asked that. But if I can move away from my kind of mindset that defaults to the hierarchy and celebrating one, I kind of want to celebrate the circle, that represents all of us. And I think the last thing I'll just say to that would, just to the way you set up that question about, working in tech, I actually in a way still think I work in tech. I think I work I think in a way, like I work in a way that supports our healthy relationships with technology. Like I'm not trying to escape tech, because tech is, it's everywhere. As I said, I think we're becoming it, but I think that we just haven't done enough work yet to make our relationship to it be more responsible. We've kind of just opened up the gates and closed our eyes, and celebrated all the ways that it can be in our lives. But I think that like our work fundamentally is about trying to create a healthier relationship, and by virtue of that, I think we're very much, I'm still very much in tech and just representing a different side of it.
Yeah. Thanks, Otto, for your time, man. This has been fun.
Hey man, I really, really am grateful again for the time and space here, and you've made me think about a lot, and it's been a long time since someone has asked me about My City Lives, and I think the opportunity to do that and to kind of connect the dots on my own journey in life, it's a real gift to have done that. So thank you, Kareem.
You're welcome. Anything else you wanted to share or want to make sure people know?
I just the last thing is, you don't need us to just play. I think that's also like, a world that's centered around scarcity and production is predicated on the idea of like, you need our thing in order to do X. Nobody needs reset whatsoever in order to feel a sense of permission around play. In our vision and our hope, I mean, maybe we're just one camp and one little convenience store and one little thing, and that's fine. But if the world is playing more, that's great. And so if you heard any of this and your interpretation or your excitement around play, you don't need us to do that. Certainly we would love to play with you. We'd love for you to come to our space, to our camps, etc. But just play.
That's a good way to end it. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Kareem.
That was good. I never know how these are going to go. Similar to like your stuff.
I mean, I think that's vulnerable, and that makes it more real. And I appreciate that. I didn't realize we had started until like maybe 5 or 10 minutes in. And then I immediately was like, oh, like I was wondering, I was going back to what I said. So I'm not used to being, not, I'm up at this time, but I'm usually up by 5. So by this time of the day, my mind is quite slow. And so when we started, I was like, I think it just took me a while to pick up that we were already in motion. But again, I think it's nice because you got a much more rough, if not real version of me.
Yeah. No, this was good. Thank you so much. I'm going to do my best to get this up within a week.
Great. Take your time.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
absolutely no rush. Don't feel in any
Oh,
way
no.
that it's needed. And yeah, whereabouts? You're in Scarborough still?
Yeah, same place.
Okay, cool.
Same place.
Yeah, so if you're ever on the West End, come through. We're relaunching our camp this year in September.
Nice. Good.
And then I didn't even get to this, but we're organizing in September an event called One Big Hug. The premise of the event is the world record for the most nationalities in a group hug is 72 people.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah, I know. So in Toronto, there's over 230 nationalities represented. So we're going to do this event in Oakwood Village, in the neighborhood where our center is, and we want to set a new world record, and in hopes of doing so, create something symbolic and, if not a conversation starter, about racial unity, but I think especially importantly about COVID unity. We got to figure out how to come back together, and so I'll keep you informed about these things, and if there's anything I can do to amplify and support you, as I said, like the work you've been doing over these years is such a gift. Like I can't tell you, like, just for me personally, to be able to have gone back and checked out some of this stuff in advance of meeting you, and then just to kind of reflect on how much labor you've put in for community to archive as you have, and particularly I would also acknowledge, like, I don't know how intentional this is, but I see you particularly creating platforms a lot for South Asians, and I think not everyone has been doing that. I certainly know that it took me a while to realize that I wasn't doing that, and so I'm really appreciative of the years of work that you've done.
Thank you. This is, people ask, and I say, well, instead of playing hockey, on a certain night or whatever, I say, I just do this. This is my hockey. But thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Listen, I'll let you got an early morning. But thanks for your time. I'll make sure when this goes up I'll drop you an email.
Okay. Cool.
As well as, I know you're not too much you're on Instagram. So I'll make sure to tag you as well.
Great. Okay.
Awesome,
man. Let me know if I can do anything else on your end. Okay.
Will do. Thank you. Take care of yourself.
Okay. Good night. Bye.
Good night. Bye.